G'day and welcome to episode 2. If you're watching this episode, I'm assuming you've seen episode 1 and have all of the mods installed from that video correctly. This episode is really focusing on overhauling the combat and the experience of fighting enemies, but we also want to have a bunch of cool new rewards. So immersive armors, weapons, Warmonger armory and Jesus swords will all add new items to the level list to make looting enemies a really exciting experience. So let's start off with immersive armors. As you can probably tell by the images on the website, they add a ton of awesome new armor to the game, whether it be Ulfric's new special armor or Cultists of Boethia having their own special sets of armor. This mod is an absolute must-have for any playthrough. Unfortunately, these mods are massive, but we'll download them regardless. Immersive weapons, exactly the same as immersive armors. This mod adds a lot of weapons that you would expect to be in Skyrim from the very get-go. Battle staves, various different types of awesome scythes, giants weapons. The Warmonger armory works a little bit differently from immersive weapons and immersive armors in that it modifies vanilla assets to unique combinations to give different armor and weapons throughout the game. So it might change an arrow's head, it might, in the case that you can see there, add tons of crap to a steel armor set to create a completely new set of ornate armor. It also quite often modifies the Thieves set to give a new rogue set of armor, overall creating a much more intricate set of armor or a much more intricate weapon that adheres to the vanilla aesthetic. So whilst immersive weapons and immersive armors really go out of their way to be quite different from vanilla Skyrim, Warmonger armory often brings it back, and it's really interesting to see how well the vanilla assets could have been used if Bethesda had a little bit more imagination. So let's download 3 files from here. We're going to need the vanilla assets, we're going to need the DLC assets, and we're also going to need this little section here, the level list that's going to populate our world with the weapons and armor from this mod. Jesus swords adds a ton of new unique weapons to the game, as well as filling out a lot of the missing variations in the base game. For example, it adds an iron longsword or some dragon steel swords and daggers, as well as a lot of uniquely hand-placed items around various quest locations. So we'll download this, and we'll also need to download an update that'll add 2 more weapons to the game. So we'll wait for these to download, and while they're downloading, we'll also download some combat overhaul mods. First thing we're going to do is install Organized Bandits in Skyrim. This is a great mod that adds over 2,000 new bandits to the game, and instead of the vanilla system where it's just random bandit, bandit archer, bandit warrior, bandit chief, all of the bandits now will be overhauled and will be part of a gang. So you might have the addled gang who are all drug addicted bandits and are relatively weak, or you might have the unloyal bandits who are members, or former members I should say, of the Stormcloaks and the Imperials who have banded together and have abandoned their previous posts. And it's a very tiered structure of bandits throughout Skyrim. So we will download Organized Bandits in Skyrim. But you may have noticed that there is version 2.01 and version 2.02, so we need both of these files in order to make it work correctly. Also, we will increase the bandit patrols to the game. This will add 90 new places where the bandits can spawn throughout the game. Awesome. We will also need the Cloaks of Skyrim patch because we have Cloaks of Skyrim installed. This will allow bandits to have the cloaks. Next up is immersive creatures. In the same way that we increase the variety of bandits, we're also going to increase the variety of Draugr, wolves, liches, golems throughout the game. It also adds a ton of new and exciting NPCs throughout the game, like the Dwemer dragon. So it's a giant mechanical dragon and gives the world a much fresher feel. Whenever you enter a dungeon, you're not going to just be fighting Draugr. There'll be something fresh, new, and interesting there. So download with Manager. Next up, Ultimate Combat. Ultimate Combat does a few things really well. First and foremost, it gives enemies the ability to dodge telegraphed attacks, which means that if you are using a very, very slow Warhammer on a mobile enemy, chances are they're gonna dodge. It makes combat much more responsive. It gives new spells for higher level enemies to use against you. And it also changes the way enemies move throughout combat, as well as adding headshots. If you hit an enemy in the head with a bow or crossbow bolt, you will do extra damage. You will get a configurable text notification and sound effect that will also let you know if you were successful or not. We can download that. Enemy AI Overhaul is similar to Ultimate Combat, but it again adds more spells for the enemies to use. It also allows enemies to use potions or racial abilities that will help them stay alive. This will prevent, in a lot of situations, you killing a bandit, looting them, and then finding out that they had a potion of ultimate healing sitting there on hand. And that's all we're going to need to improve the enemy's combat in the game. Now that we have a lot more enemies to fight, let's add some friends. Interesting NPCs in Skyrim adds over 200 new voiced NPCs to the game, dozens of new quests, and over a dozen followers as well, all custom voiced. And if I didn't tell you, you wouldn't know that these were not vanilla NPCs. The only difference between these NPCs and the vanilla NPCs is these NPCs, generally speaking, have a lot more to say. The followers are fantastic. They will give notifications at certain points in the world space. They will give notifications when you complete certain objectives in the storyline, and overall add a lot more breadth and depth to the allies in Skyrim. But again, you'll notice that there are two files that I'm looking at, version 3.09 and version 3.10, and we cannot download with Manager. We have to download manually because of the enormous file size. So let's get that underway. Next up, Immersive Citizens. Immersive Citizens does several things to the citizens, particularly in Whiterun. It gives them new patterns of behavior to follow, so they'll be more likely to be in the Drunken Huntsman at night. They'll be more likely to be in the marketplace during the day. Members of the Companions Guild won't be inside drinking at 8 AM. They will be outside training as you would expect them to be. Nazim might actually visit the Cloud District, but what I'm really interested in it for is how it affects the citizens' AI when they're under attack. When a citizen is attacked by a vampire or a dragon, they will not try and fight the dragon, whether they be a blacksmith or working for Bellathor in the general goods store. They will leg it. It also changes some of the combat behavior states for some of the enemies in the game, placing them into a fearless category or a strategist category or cautious category, changing how they behave. But that's not really what we're after it for. We're after it to protect the citizens of Skyrim. So, bang. Now, this is going to take a little while to finish downloading, and I'll get back to you when it's done. Rightio, now that we have OBIS and various other mods downloading, let's install those weapon and armor mods that we downloaded just before, starting off with Immersive Armors. Extracting these files is going to take a little while because they are massive. They shouldn't have too much of an impact on performance because they are just armors. It's not like they have massive textures over all of Skyrim. They're pretty lightweight, all things considered. The things that are really going to impact performance will be things like texture mods, new water mods, things that add physics to the game, or lots of different shaders, shadow effects. Okay, now that we're in Immersive Armor's installer, UNP support is a body mod that we have not yet installed and that I will not be installing for this video. If you ever do download the UNP body type, you will need to go back, reinstall Immersive Armors, and go from there. It's going to take a little while to install as well. Alright, Immersive Armors has finally finished installing. Let's do Immersive Weapons. Not quite as large, so hopefully it won't take as long. Wonderful. Alright, now that Immersive Weapons has finished installing, let's install the Warmonger Armory. You may have noticed that there was a slight cut here and the time is now 1 AM. I was very unhappy with how I did the Warmonger Armory before and I am redoing it. So let's install the vanilla assets, manual, data, set data directory, thank you very much. The DLC, manual, set as data directory. Now, when I hit OK, it's actually going to throw a slight warning message because I am installing 2 mods with the exact same name. I can do one of 2 things. I can replace the mod, which will delete the existing mod by the name of Warmonger Armory, or I can merge the mods, which will place all of the files that I currently have selected here in the meshes and texture section, as well as this ESP file, in with the current files of Warmonger Armory. This is going to be a trend for some of the more complex mods that require several patches moving forward. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to merge these 2 mods together. And I'm going to do the exact same thing with the level list section, making sure that the name is exactly the same, selecting as data directory and hitting OK, merging them once more. Right, sorry about the jarring, back to the normal video. And let's install Jesu Swords, manual, perfect. It'll take a little while to install. And we're going to perform the exact same step that we just did for the Warmonger Armory. Merge, please. We have those 6 mods installed in 4 little boxes. Let's tick all of these on. Everything's fine. Let's open up SKSE just to make sure that everything's still running just dandy. Okay, Immersive Armors has finished configuring. One of the nifty things about Immersive Armors is that you can turn on whether or not certain armors are dropped throughout the world. Another nifty thing about Immersive Armors is some of the armors you can actually configure if you want them to be light or heavy armor. For example, you might prefer that the fur hoods in the game are actually heavy armor. Or the robes might actually all be light armor or heavy armor, whatever you see fit. But let's save the game and move on. Right, while we were messing around with Immersive Armors, everything else has finished downloading. So let's begin with Organized Bandits in Skyrim 2.01. Manual, thank you. Data folder, thank you. Install, wonderful. Now this was another one of those folders similar to Warmonger Armory where it's in multiple parts. So again, we have to make sure it has the same name. This is actually the data folder. I know it doesn't say data, but believe me, it is. Merge, thank you. There we are, it's updated version 2.02. Now, since we have Cloaks of Skyrim and Immersive Armors 7, we downloaded that patch. Manual, thank you. Merge. And the Bandit Patrols. Merge, thank you. Alright, now let's have a quick look inside there. And all of those ESPs that we just installed, the Immersive Armors and Cloaks, Bandit Patrols, have all installed correctly. Now let's install Immersive Creatures. This has an installer. Alrighty, Immersive Creatures has a nice convenient installer for us. select the DLC you have, in this instance all of it. This is for a mod called Skyrim Redone. We do not have that installed, nor will we, so we won't be using that. But we will be using Revenge of the Enemies, so let's hit next. And again, it's going to take a little while. And there we go. Next is Ultimate Combat. Data folder is 2 down. Select a data folder. Okay. Revenge of the Enemies. Wonderful. But before we install Immersive Citizens, we have to install interesting NPCs. And here it is as an archive. Manual installation. Let's give it a proper name. Make sure you give it a proper name as well, one that you can remember. We will have to use it again later. Select the data folder. And again, it's an absolutely massive mod, and I'll get back to you when it's done. Interesting NPCs version 3.09 has finished installing, but if you remember, we downloaded 2 versions of it. And we need to extract this archive here. I'm just going to use WinRAR, you can use 7-zip, whatever you feel like. Now, inside there is a README. The long and short of the README is that inside these 2 folders are each a data folder, and we need to merge them together in order to create the mod that we want. This is if you have Hearthfire, otherwise you can just use this one, but you should have Hearthfire if you're following this guide. So we'll take this data folder out, place it there, and then take the Hearthfire data folder out and just place it on the desktop. And we'll merge all of these folders. The order in which you do it is important. You should extract the main data folder first and then the Hearthfire patch. Now we are going to add to archive, and we are going to give it the name Interesting NPCs. Okay. Now that that RAR file has finished, we can open up, hit add a new mod, Interesting NPCs, open, finish it off, NPCs, there we are, does it for us, and data, there we go. It's going to ask us to merge it again. And everything is just fine. Let's install Immersive Citizens. We do not have any of the main files for the patches that we want to put in, so we just hit install. Add all of these mods to our load order. Check that there are no conflicts. Wonderful. We're actually starting to get quite a few mods, so maybe hitting the sort button isn't such a bad idea. And it's made a couple of changes. Let's run. Alright, we're back in Skyrim after loading back up. I have moved from outside the Hunting Brew Meadery. I had to go find some volunteers. These are some of the new bandits that we've spawned in the game, and I had to look for this, the Book of Bandits. This gives you a little bit of information about how bandits in Skyrim works, and is a good overview for the mod. Speaking of overview for the mod, we have a mod configuration menu, the OBIS menu. Here we can dictate how the spawning of the game works. For example, we can turn off whether or not we want potions to be on bandits. And I do want bandits to have potions because of the new mods that we've installed. They will actually use them, so I would like a 30% chance. I think that seems reasonable. This increases or decreases the rate in which bandits spawn. I actually think by default it spawns too many bandits, and so I'm going to actually double that. I do not want those spawn messages. That's really, really annoying. and I want bandits to self-delete. That means that when it spawns extra bandits, when I leave the cell, the bandits are going to go away. This is going to prevent your cities from getting ravaged by bandits. Aside from OBIS, we also installed Ultimate Combat. Here we can adjust some of the difficulty staggers as well as letting us know whether or not we got a headshot. I like the sound, I do not like the message. Also, I do not think it's fair that since we've installed so many difficulty mods that the Dwarven Centurions and the Dragon Priest should have double their normal health. That seems a little bit ridiculous. So I'm going to decrease this to 1.5. The other mod that we installed this time around was of course Immersive Creatures. And we can also enable or disable the additional spawns. Since we have so many bandits, we might want to enable or disable the additional spawns, depending if you get a lot of crashes when you find you're running around in the world. That might just because your system simply cannot handle it. We can also change the global difficulty of the enemies. So this is not only how much health and damage they have, but some of the AI scripts attached to the enemies. And yeah, let's save our game. The next set of mods that we are going to install are all focused around what I have on the screen at the moment, which is Grimy Utilities. This is a functionality add-on that provides the framework for us to forget spells, to cast spells without equipping them. So let's say for example you have 2 daggers in your left and right hand respectively. You can actually cast flames or any other spell for that matter without having to unequip either one of your daggers. It allows you to craft many items at the same time. So let's say for example you're creating 600 daggers to level up your smithing. You can do that. You can temper weapons in different ways. You can inspect weapons. But before we can get all of that stuff working, we need to download its prerequisites. There's nothing fancy about them, so I'm not going to worry about a big in-depth explanation. They're all just frameworks to allow Grimy Utilities to work. So don't stress. Just download the NIST tools. Download the Grimy plugin. Download UI extension. And download FIS. Alright, with those 4 downloading, we can also download now Grimy Utilities. All these mods are super small, so don't even stress. Alright, let's install them. There's nothing fancy about them. If you just go back, SRC stands for source, so that is the source code if you're interested. Grimy's plugin, manual, perfect. UI extensions, perfect. File interface, perfect. And Grimy Utilities, perfect. Alright, let's activate all of these. Let's quickly sort the mods just in case anything needs to change. Looks like it's all good, and let's play the game. Alright, I have moved our Ironclad Warrior to just outside of the Honey Brew Meadery. It's a bit more of a aesthetic location than the horrifying bandit infested rocks over there. And Grimy Utilities has been detected, so let's start configuring it. There we are. I'm only going to mention a couple of the core utilities because this mod is very expansive, and I suggest you just play around with it to learn a few things about it. There are some mod spotlights who have explained it better than I can or that I have time for in this video. So let's just set up the hotkey cast spells just to give you a taste of how it works. So we have to enable the functionality, select G as the spell mark key, and let's just configure one hotkey, just the number 1. And we'll just get out of this, and I'll go into first person, and I will equip a sword and a dagger in my left and right hands. So there is no way I could cast flames. Haha, that's where you're wrong. Let me open up the spellbook. Let me hit G. I will assign it to slot number 1. And now I will press number 1. and I am casting flames. Really, really fantastic mod. Play around with it. It's worth it just for that functionality. Of course, you can balance this as well. If you think that's a little bit overpowered, you can adjust the mana cost. You can also refund your perks, but that might come later. Until later, let's just save. Alright, let's round out this gameplay episode with some mods that are going to affect the lighting in the game and how NPCs will respond to the dark. First up, immersive NPCs in the dark. This simply makes it so that if an NPC cannot see because it is too dark, they will use mage light. If they're a mage, they will equip a wearable lantern, they will use a torch, and so on. Obviously the undead and Khajiit don't need to use torches, so they won't. Download with manager, thank you. Immersive detection of NPCs. This breaks the day into 4 separate sections for NPC detection: dawn, day, dusk, and nighttime. During the day, NPCs will be able to spot you at a much greater distance than they normally would. However, your sound will not be as impactful when NPCs are trying to find you. At night, sound will be much more important, but being visually in the way of NPCs will be less important. They rely on their ears more during the night and their eyes more during the day. At dusk, it's halfway in between the two, and the morning is very similar to a night, as well as your eyes haven't quite finished adjusting to the brightness of the day. But we will need 2 files on this page. First off, the immersive detection of NPCs main file and the very dark night only file. This is because we are using Climate of Tamriel, and later on we will also be using an EMB. This will make the nights very deep and dark. Next up, Supreme Storms. This makes the density of storms, so the rain and the snow in thunderstorms and blizzard, much more apparent. That's all there is to it. It's just a small mod, but we need to download the Climates of Tamriel version. Next up, smoking torches and candles. I'm really only interested in it for the smoking torches aspect, as I will be using a different mod for the smoking candles. So just download the smoking torches section. This simply makes torches smoke. Next up, proper torch wield. This makes it so that you hold the torch away from your face so it doesn't obstruct your field of view in first person. But since we installed smoking torches, we also need to install the smoking torches patch. So download both of these. Alrighty. Fortunately, there's nothing too fancy about these mods, so we'll just install them easy peasy like we have a dozen times beforehand. Just in the order which we downloaded them. Oops, set data directory. Now this is immersive detection of NPCs, the very dark version. We will want to merge these 2 files together. If you do note that NPCs have too much trouble finding you, you might want to remove immersive detection of NPCs and just reinstall the main module, as the very dark night version does make it slightly harder for them to find you. Smoking torches, perfect. Proper torch wield, don't need such a massive name. And perfect. There we go. Merge, thank you. Activate all of these, and let's start Skyrim to see if everything's working just fine. Okay, I have loaded back into the game. I have cheated and given myself a torch, and as you can see, it is definitely smoking. I am holding it off to the side, and in first person it is a lot less obstructive. Unfortunately, since we are using enhanced camera, it does get in the way a little bit, but it's still much better than it normally would be. Thanks for joining me for episode 2. In episode 3, we'll be going through and we'll be changing all of the magical aspects of the game. So everything from spells to dragons, werewolves and vampires will be completely overhauled, and I'll see you there.